cover some of the issues in regards to the food and the kosher, which is kind of odd, really. You know, when we typically approach it, wait a minute, we're talking about Nadab and Abihu and the priesthood being put into service, and these guys offer strange fire, and this comes out, and all of a sudden we're going to switch to food? It doesn't make any sense. But you got to understand the context that it's given in. The context that it's given in is God is telling the priesthood, and all Israel for that matter, that they are to be holy because he is holy, and set apart because he is set apart. And God said, I will be regarded as holy among all the people. Now we approach this idea of far as food because it has to deal with issues of holiness. That's what we're talking about. It's not something that's abstract, that's put in a parentheses. Oh, by the way, I better write this down while I'm thinking about it. There's a purpose, and it does flow when you read it in the context that it was given. And this picture, I just thought it was just kind of odd. If you see the picture up here, it says the Hanukkah ham. It literally says, delicious for Hanukkah, boneless smoked ham, $6.29 a pound. Wow. Can you believe it? That was a new one on me, so, you know. Yeah. So, anyway. So yeah, just kind of putting that up there. So in regards to this, you know, and this is, like I said, one of the big things that people fight you on is Sabbath and kosher, but that's because they don't understand it. And they've been told through centuries, literally, that it doesn't matter. You can do whatever and it doesn't matter. But my question is this. Even if you ask most believers, so God saved you, redeemed you, he made you holy, and the answer is, well, yeah. So he wants you to live a holy lifestyle. Sure. Don't you think that's in his word? Oh, no, that's legalism. I don't think so. I think that the Father is telling us how to live holy lives. He sets us apart. He makes us holy, but then he tells us to stay that way. And we have that power within ourselves. It's not that a matter of, oh, I can do this and make myself more holy than the next guy. No, God makes every man holy. He redeems everyone the same. It's not like he had to do more work to redeem you. I don't care how bad you were. And then he says, I've made you holy, now stay that way. And so it's up to us to stay that way. In order to do that, we have to learn what his word says. All right, so you ready? We're going to get into this, and we're going to read this in the Torah, and I'm going to go into the New Testament, the Brit Hadashah, and I'm going to show you some of the common arguments, not all of them, we don't have the time for it, but I'm going to show you some of the common arguments and what they were actually and literally addressing, okay? If you want more details on it, we go through these same scriptures a little more in-depth. We've got a teaching called Kosher, Clean, Common. It's 2 parts. You can talk to Doris, and you can get that if you really want that. We may even have some over here. One of Paul's friends just listened to it 30 times. You right? Literally. Just called him and said, I just finished my 30th time listening to it. I think I got it now. Wow. Anyway. So in regards to this, okay, as a result of what just happened, this is set in place, okay? Leviticus 10:10. You will distinguish between what? Holy and common, and between what? Unclean and clean. Look at verse 11. And so you will teach the people of Israel all the laws Adonai has taught them through Moses. So one of the responsibilities of the Levites was to teach the people the differences between clean, unclean, holy, and common. And to teach them the things that God said to do. They're called the hokim. It's often translated as decrees, ordinances, laws. It's also translated as customs. Right? And so this is what they were told to do. They were told to teach the children of Israel these things. Okay? Ezekiel 44:23 and 24, talking about the priesthood, the sons of Zadok, right? The priesthood that is set in place. They are to teach my people the difference between what? Holy and common, and enable them to distinguish between what? Clean and unclean. The thing is, in our congregations and our assemblies today, how many people are taught this? Because here's the truth of it. When you go in the Brit Hadashah, when you go in the New Testament, it may reference issues of clean and everything, but it doesn't quite tell you what it is. It may reference something being unclean, but it doesn't explain it. Where do you find the explanation in between these things? Right here. And if you're told that, the Old Testament, you don't have to worry about it, it's done away with, then you're going to have to rip out a whole lot of the new. Because it really does set the foundation and explain for what is being done in the Brit Hadashah. Ezekiel 44:24. They are to be judges in controversies, and they are to render decisions in keeping with my rulings. Mishpat. My rulings. And at all my designated festivals, Moedim, they are to keep, what's keep? Shamar. That means to keep, to guard, to protect my laws, Torah, and regulations, Hukah, and they are to keep my Sabbaths holy. This is the responsibility of the priests, guys. And so we're told today, and how many of you have heard this, and it's true, you are a royal priesthood, a holy nation. You are priests and kings. You are priests of the Most High. Okay, are you doing this? Then you're not doing your job. There it is, right there. What about the scripture that says, it literally says, people should seek Torah from the priest because he is the messenger of Adonai Tzebaot. So people are going to the priesthood to seek what? Torah? No, people are going to the priesthood to seek their opinions. And opinions don't matter when you stand before the king. Right? So, in order to advance, we got to understand this. Before we can move on, we have to understand these 4 basic words that we think we already understand. Right? Holy, common, clean, and unclean. And how to put a difference between them. How to discern between these things. So we're going to define these things, and I'll explain these to you, and then we'll go into the Brit Hadashah, and I'll show you a couple things there as well. The difference between, when it says that you are to put a difference between, is the 2 words, badal and bain. Badal means to divide, to separate, or to distinguish. Bain means to put a distinction or something that is between. Okay? In other words, to divide for distinction and discernment, once it is looked at, once you look it over, then the decision is made if you separate from it or separate it as holy. When you discern something, it's for the purpose of, now what do I do with it? And so it's to discern and put a difference between to set it apart. So there must be a difference between clean and unclean. There must be a difference between holy and common. Right? So what is the word for holy? Kodesh. Kodesh. Kodesh means holy. It's something that is sacred, a sacred place or a sacred thing. It's also the word for sanctuary, a saint, something that is set apart. Okay, something that is sacred. Next is common. Common means profane, common, or unholy. The word common is often used throughout Scripture for idolatry. Okay, we think common just means, okay, it's like an everyday kind of a thing. And it can be that, but it also means idolatry. It can also be translated as something that's involved with idolatry. Keep that in mind because that's going to be important. Next, clean. Clean is tahor. Clean means something that is pure in a physical or a ceremonial or moral sense. In other words, this, like when you went to worship, when you went to the tabernacle, when you went to the temple, even in Yeshua's day, you would have to take a look at yourself and mikvah before you would go worship. That's why there's all these mikvah pools all over the Temple Mount, right? They weren't training for the Olympics. Right? So they would go in, they would mikvah as they would go to approach to go worship, right? So they would be in a state of clean. And then the last one is unclean, which is tameh. It means something foul or something that is defiled or something that is polluted even, okay? So then we look at this, unclean and clean, clean and unclean. Now we got to understand, if something is unclean, it does not always mean it is sin. Sin is unclean, but not everything that's unclean is sin. That's where I tend to lose most Christians. Okay? But just because it's unclean doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means it's not set apart for a state of worship. Okay? It's not holy. It hasn't been mikvahed. It's contaminated. Okay? And this is what it is. So, clean and unclean is a ritual state of being like this. If you brought an offering, you had to be what? Clean. If you brought an offering, you had to be clean. To be unclean was not a sin, but it was defilement. Okay? Because let's face it, we live in an unclean world and there's a lot of things around that can defile, right? And so before we go to worship, we would have to take a good look at ourselves and make sure that as we came before the Most High, we were clean. Now, it's not a matter of trying to earn your salvation or work your way into being. No, that's not it at all. It's a matter of considering ourselves when we come before him. And that's even measured in repentance. He's the one that does the work of making us clean. Okay? But keep in mind, clean and unclean was a ritual state of being. Okay? So now we are told this. We need to discern us, and we need to discern our surroundings. Why? In order to do that, we are told what is clean and what is unclean in regards to food, what we eat. What's this got to do with anything? Because we are taught how to biblically discern in the natural what the Father is trying to tell us in the spiritual. Paul said this way, what comes first, the natural man or the spirit? The natural things come first, then the spiritual things, right? Here's a great example. You were born, and then at some point in your life you are born again, right? So this is what we're talking about. And so the same thing with clean, unclean, holy, and common. We are taught how to discern those things around us, and we are taught to take stock of those things so that we know where we are, so we know how we stand in the midst of these things. And when we learn to discern these things, most people kind of go one direction this way, one direction that way, but we need to kind of keep the balance in the whole thing. Because let's face it, if you're just stuck on unclean and common, how many of you know people like that? You're stuck on unclean and common. That's idolatry. That's bad. That's bad. Look at that person over there. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that over there. And oh, look at this over there. Oh, that's so terrible. And this is this. Where's the holy? Where's the clean? Their discernment is off. If they're looking around and all they are ever seeing is there's just the bad and the hate and this and that and the pagan and the idolatry and guess what? If that's all they ever see, their discernment is off. Because I think we can all understand pointing at all the problems will keep you busy till the day you die. Why aren't we pointing at the answer? See, when you learn what is clean, then you automatically know what is unclean. But if you spend all your time studying what is unclean, you will spend your whole life studying what is unclean. And you're going to be defiled in the process. But if you keep studying what is clean and holy, then you're going to know what is unclean and common. Make sense? Okay, the purpose of discerning these things is so that you won't be defiled. Very simple. The purpose of discerning these things is so that you will not be defiled. And we see that in the scripture, literally. So what? Big deal. So what happens if I become defiled? After all, doesn't Yeshua make me clean? Yes. But doesn't he tell you to stay that way? What about all the scriptures that say, go and sin no more? What is sin? Transgressing Torah. That's what John said, right? Leviticus 11:43. You are not to make yourselves detestable with any of these swarming, crawling creatures. Do not make yourselves unclean with them, and do not defile yourselves with them. Unclean and defilement. Look at verse 44. Well, why not? Verse 44 gives us the answer. Because I am Adonai, your God. In other words, I'm God, you're not. You ever notice that's a lot of answers in Scripture? You know, whenever you're reading a passage and God says, I am the Lord your God, he's kind of reminding us of that. He's reminding us, I thought I'm the one that redeemed you. I thought I'm the one that bought you. I thought I was God. I thought you belonged to me. Right? Yeah, or as if we were telling our children, like Paul said, if we were talking to our kids, it would be, because I said so. Right? Verse 44. I am Adonai your God, therefore, see, there it is. I am the Lord your God. Therefore, consecrate yourselves and be holy, for I am holy. Do not defile yourselves with any kind of swarming creature that moves along the ground. For I am Adonai, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt to be your God. Therefore, you are to be holy because I am holy. Just in these 3 verses, I think God is driving home a point. Don't you? We need to pay attention to that. That is the purpose of what he's trying to explain here. Verse 46. Such then is the law concerning animals, flying creatures, all living creatures that move about in the water, and all the creatures that swarm on the ground. Its purpose is, one, to distinguish between the unclean and the clean. Okay, why does it matter to distinguish between the unclean and the clean? So that we know what is good for offerings. So we know what we can put on the altar. You don't put unclean things on the altar. Okay? So we know what can be put on the altar. But it doesn't stop there. It continues to say, and between the creatures that may be eaten and those that may not be eaten. So it's not just discerning between clean and unclean, but now that we've made the distinction and discern between what's clean and unclean, now we know what we can and can't eat. And put it to you this way. If we wouldn't put it on the altar of God, why would we eat it? So the children of Yahweh need to understand and discern between clean, unclean, holy, and common. How did Noah know what to bring in the ark? God told him. Well, how did he tell him? He told him a very simple, very basic way. He said, of every clean animal, you're to take 7 couples. 7 pairs, 7 couples of every clean animal. And take a pair of the unclean. And then the birds take the 7 of the birds, right? So in order to preserve their species throughout the earth. So again, if this wasn't an issue, why would God say, of the clean animals, take this, of the unclean animals, take that? How did Noah know? I think God kind of told him. I think he would have kind of known. Right? So how do we know? What is clean? What is unclean? I give you some very simple, very basic rules. Witnesses, if you will. Okay? First off, for the animals, there's only 2 requirements. Only 2. Let's make this easy. 1, completely split hooves. 2, ruminate, chew its cud. Okay? So why isn't the pig kosher? It has completely split hooves. It doesn't chew its cud. It doesn't ruminate. So think of it this way. On the outside, it has the appearance of kosher. It fulfills the outward appearance of being kosher. But on the inside, it does not fulfill its requirement. See? And so it's important. Not just that we have an outside witness, but there must be the internal witness as well. Okay? 2 main requirements. Completely split hooves, and it must ruminate. Fish, 2 rules. Fins and scales. Of the things in the sea, must have fins and scales. Okay? Catfish. Nope. Shark. Nope. Eel. Nope. Swordfish. Dolphins. Nope. Lobster? No. Mussels? No. Oysters? No. Crawfish? No. Well, what can you eat then? Guys, it's not hard. 2 things, fins and scales. There's a lot of them out there. Okay? All right? And something you'll find in common. Some people will say, oh, don't eat the bottom feeders. No, that's not necessarily true. You can't say that because Scripture doesn't say that. It just says fins and scales. Okay? That's your requirement. If it's got fins and scales, it's acceptable. And the word kosher just means proper. Okay? It just means proper. That which is fit, that which is proper and good. Birds. As you read through the Scripture, the non-kosher birds are named. Okay? If they're not named, they're good. What about this one? Insects. The flying, teeming, walk on 4 legs and have jumping legs, like the cricket, the grasshopper, the locust, which actually is a very high source of protein. If you get a pound of those, they actually have more protein than a steak. The question is, how are you going to eat a pound of them? All right? Okay, and that's it. That's really it, okay? It's not that difficult. It's not that hard, okay? But look at this. Remember, the real issue is, well, what can I eat then? I'm going to starve. I don't think so. All right? The real issue is don't defile yourself. The real issue is do not become a defilement and then come into the presence of God. That's the point. Do not defile yourself, then go to the tabernacle. Because if you are defiled and you go to the tabernacle, you're going to defile the tabernacle. And if you defile the tabernacle, what's going to happen to you? That's another reason why the Levites were positioned around there, to guard the sanctity of the sanctuary, to make sure that the sanctuary stayed holy and set apart. And so that as you approached, they would make sure you were clean, that you had mikvahed, that the offerings you're bringing are good. And see, today, man, if we stopped somebody at the door and said, hey, that guy over there, did you repent to that guy over there before you came in here tonight? We turn around and go home. Like, no, I know. I saw you guys arguing out there. You go fix that and then come back in here. Wouldn't we? Okay, so that's what he's saying. So do not become unclean or defile yourself, then come into the presence of God. And notice he's not saying, so stay home then. He's saying, fix it. Okay? Leviticus 15:31. This is important. In this way, you will separate the people of Israel from their uncleanness. Why is it important to separate the people of Israel from their uncleanness? Keep reading. So that they will not die in a state of uncleanness. Well, that wouldn't be good. So what's the big deal if they died in a state of uncleanness? For defiling my tabernacle. Oh. See, it's one thing. I mean, yes, okay, praise God that his atonement and his grace does cover us, okay? But at the same time, that doesn't relieve us of our responsibility to walk upright. True? And so he says, do not defile the tabernacle. Do not defile the sanctuary, okay? Look at this. How much more defiling the tabernacle within them? It says this way, 2 Corinthians 6:16. What agreement can there be between the temple of God and idols? For we are the temple of the living God. As God has said, I will walk among you, I will be their God, they will be my people. Therefore, Adonai says, go out from their midst, separate yourselves, don't touch what is unclean, and I will receive you. By the way, that's quoting from Isaiah 52. But, just to kind of make sure we're on point, what book is this? 2 Corinthians. Where is that found? Brit Hadashah. And it's saying to make a distinction between clean and unclean. Separate yourselves. Don't touch the unclean things. What book is this again? I'm just making sure I understand it, right? 1 Peter 1:14 through 16 says this. As people who obey God, well, there's a problem there in the first place. As people who obey God, do not let yourselves be shaped by the evil desires you used to have when you were still what? Ignorant. Well, I ate pork all my life, and God never struck me dead. Guys, like I said, you know, I was born in Kentucky, family West Virginia. I'm Southern, and my dad was military. He was all over the place, but no matter where we were, we was always Southern. Okay? Pork was not a food. It was a seasoning. It was in everything. You know? Okay? But we were also ignorant. Didn't know any better. Once the truth is given to you, you're held accountable to it. James says, to him who knows to do good and doesn't do it, it is sin. So if you know what is good, if you know what is right, you're held accountable if you're going to stand to it or not. It says this, verse 15. On the contrary, following the Holy One who called you, be holy yourselves. What's it say next? In your entire way of life. Since the Tanakh says you are to be holy because I am holy. Now, this is interesting. You are to be holy in your entire way of life. If we think that God is really concerned about every aspect of our life and He wants all of you wholeheartedly, why do we think He's not concerned about what we eat? If He's concerned about every aspect of your life, why would He not be concerned about that? Leviticus 11:45. For I am Adonai who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. Therefore, you are to be holy. Why? Because I am holy. Leviticus 19:2. Speak to the entire community of Israel and tell them, you people are to be holy because I, Adonai, your God, am holy. So this, I find this interesting and it goes right along with this. The center of the Torah If you count the letters in the Torah, okay, the very center of the Torah is in this passage of Scripture. It's this, Leviticus 11:42. Whatever moves on its stomach, or goes on all fours, or has many legs, all the creatures, the word for stomach, in that word is the very center of the Torah. By counting, it has the equal number of letters on each side. And so, what's that have to do with it? At the very heart of the matter is your belly. I find it interesting that the word used here for stomach, gahon, is also used only one other time in the Torah in reference to the serpent crawling on his belly. Well, look at this. In the Scripture, you see it this way. In the Torah, you see it this way. Where gahon. If you look, you'll see that the vav is elongated. Now, that's not like one of the jots or tittles or anything like that. It's just something that the scribes put there. No, this is not adding to the word or taking away. They're not removing letters or adding letters, anything like that. But what they are doing is making a mark. This is the very center of the Torah. So at the very center of the Torah, the concern is your belly. Interesting, isn't it? So look at this. There was a mark made by the scribes. Like we said, the elongated vav is in the word for belly. It is the belly of the Torah. It's also the part of the Torah that teaches us about holiness, about clean, about unclean, and what we allow where? Into our belly. Interesting, isn't it? Moving on. What's that got to do with us? Okay, let's look in the Brit Hadashah. Philippians 3:17 and 19. So brothers, join in imitating me and keep your eyes on those who walk according to the example you have in us. For many of whom I have often told you and now tell you even with tears, walk as enemies of the cross of Christ. Verse 19. Their end is destruction, their God is their belly. And they glory in their shame with mind set on earthly things. This could mean many things. One, their God is their belly, meaning their appetites and their desires, sinful desires, sinful appetites, lust of the flesh kind of thing. But it also can mean very well, again, think about this. When you say to someone, I desire to keep the Torah because I see that it's valid for today, the two things they always fight you on, Sabbath and kosher. That's right. The first two things they try to do. Why is that? That's just a fulfillment of this scripture right here. Because, oh no, see, it's gone away. You don't have to worry about that. The Old Testament's been done away with when you get to things like this. But talk about tithing in a church. Right? Acts 15. Remember the Acts 15 council? Remember the idea that was being given here, okay? Put it in its context. The council at Acts 15 was this. What are we going to do with all these Gentiles who want to serve God but don't know anything about Him? That was the issue. To sum it all up, that's what was happening in Acts 15. What are we going to do with the Gentiles? Those of the nations who don't know anything about God, but they want to serve Him. They've repented. They've seen He is God. What are we going to do with them? These people are nuts. Right? They're trying to do all this stuff that they did before, and you don't do that to God. Right? So what are we going to do with them? James, the half-brother of Yeshua, if you want to put it that way, stood up and made a ruling. Okay? And we'll cover this quickly. The question was, what do we tell all these Gentiles that are coming to the faith concerning circumcision? In other words, they would need to convert to Judaism before they could come and serve God. And then they must keep Torah. So the question was, what are we going to do with these Gentiles? So we're telling them they have to be circumcised and they have to keep the Torah. Now remember, in this day and age, the term circumcision did not just mean a cutting of the flesh, a cutting of the foreskin. It meant you had to convert to Judaism before they would circumcise you. That's the problem. You're not a Jew. So why are you going to convert to Judaism? And then they have to circumcise you to serve God. Do you have to be a Jew to serve God? No. I mean, Jew was one of how many tribes? So this was the issue. You have to convert to Judaism to serve God. And that wasn't the case. Okay? And then keep Torah. So Acts 15:1. Some of the men came down from Yehuda to Antioch and began teaching the brothers, you can't be saved unless you undergo Brit Milah, the manner prescribed by Moshe. In other words, you cannot be saved, you cannot be born again unless you convert to Judaism and are circumcised. So what happens in the process? What happens in the meantime? Right? Okay, verse 5. But some of those who had come to trust were from the party of the Pharisees. Notice, Pharisees who came to faith, who believed, right? And they stood up and said, it is necessary to circumcise them and direct them to observe the Torah of Moshe. That's two questions, not one. They have to convert to Judaism and be circumcised, and they have to keep the Torah. James said this, therefore it is my opinion that we should not put obstacles in the way of the Goyim that are turning to God. Instead, we should write them a letter telling them this. In other words, he addressed the issue of circumcision by saying they don't need to convert to Judaism to serve God, but they do need to do this. They do need to keep the Torah. And this is what he was telling them. Look, to abstain from things polluted by idols, abstain from idolatry and things polluted from idols, that's defilement, that's idolatry. From fornication, sexual immorality. Refrain from what is strangled. Guess what, guys? That's issues of kosher. Things that are things that are strangled. Abstaining from blood. Abstaining from the blood. Why? Because the blood was given to make atonement on the altar. Life of all flesh is in the blood. And we often say, and these are the 4 things that they're told to do. And I say that's wrong. There was 5. Those are only the 4 that people say. The 5th one was because from the ancient times, Moshe has had in synagogues his word professed every Shabbat. In other words, go to the Sabbath, to the synagogues, on the Sabbath, there we go, to hear the Torah proclaimed. Amen. So, first off, we have to have a place to come on the Sabbath, and the next off, are they teaching Torah? In other words, start with these 4 things, then gather with the people of God to keep the Torah, and to hear the Torah taught, and to hear it proclaimed. Then you grow. It's a starting place. And then you learn and you grow in the Torah. And that's what he's talking about. For from the earliest times, Moshe has had in every city those who proclaim him with his words being read in the synagogues every Shabbat. He's saying, go to the synagogue on Shabbat to hear the Torah, to hear it taught, to hear it proclaimed. So both issues addressed is this. Conversion to Judaism was not necessary for salvation. But keeping the Word of God is. All right? Well, if this teaching has blessed you, I want you to check out our other resources. You can check out our website at www.ruachonline.com. And there's links there to other resources that are available to you, other teachings, other books, other offerings. You can go to YouTube, Facebook, all of these things from our website, and check us out, because if they enjoyed this teaching, there's going to be much more that hopefully will bless you as well. Thank you. Hi, this is Dr. David Jones from Ruach Ministries International, and I've got some exciting news for you. We have a new series coming out, 6-part series of the Gospel according to Abraham. Abraham? What does he got to do with the Gospel? Well, you're going to have to find out, aren't you? The thing is, Galatians 3 says that the Gospel was proclaimed to Abraham. So what does that mean for a believer today? What does that mean to a person who is not Jewish? What does that mean to a person who is Jewish? What does that mean for all of us today? Well, check it out. It's a good series, and it'll be coming your way soon. For more information, you can check out our website at www.ruachonline.com. Hi, this is Dr. David Jones here. I just want to say we do have some other resources available to you, one of which is a book entitled Famine, Walking in Blessing in the Time of Famine. It's based out of Amos 8, 11, and 12, talking about there's a famine of hearing the word of the Lord. So what is that famine? Does it mean the word of the Lord is not being proclaimed, or does it mean there's a famine of actually listening to it? Food for thought, isn't it? Well, if you want to know more, check it out. Go to www.ruachonline.com, and there's a link on our homepage. Just click and it'll take you to more information on the book entitled Famine, Walking in Blessing in a Time of Famine. Well, how important are the feasts of the Lord? I think we can say that if the Lord set out a banquet, set out a table, and invited you to come be a partaker, would we answer? Would we hear? Would we go? Or would we blow him off because we have something more important to do? Well, that's what this book is. The King invites you to his table. Are we going to answer the call? The feast of the Lord, appointed times where the Lord has said he wants to meet with us face to face. Will we heed? Will we answer? Will we go? Check it out, www.ruachonline.com. On the homepage, there is a link to take you for more information. The King invites you to his table.